another video on cheap bacon pasta. So I think we can make this just a little bit cheaper, but I think we're only going to end up shaving about 5p off it by using tomato puree instead of chopped tomatoes. So my kind of thoughts are, I did an experiment, and kind of the cheapest way to add tomatoes to a dish, and even though these three products are different prices, they're different kind of concentrations of tomato. So I kind of worked out that how much tomato puree would be the same amount of using tomatoes, and how much passata would be the same amount of using tomatoes, as part of a larger kind of experiment. Because if we're going to be using a tin of tomatoes in a recipe that just requires one tin of tomatoes, then you might as well just buy a tin of tomatoes rather than buying a tube of tomato puree or a carton of or glass jar of tomato passata, because you'll then have to do something with those products. So if you end up throwing those away because you don't use them, then you're actually wasting money. Much better to buy a slightly more expensive product like a tin of tomatoes than waste food, unless you're going to use those in some kind of something else. I'd kind of say just buy a tin of tomatoes. I mean, even though, so those are 40p each, and at the moment tomato passata is 55p. So you actually get more tomato in that, but it slightly costs you more. If you're going to throw it away, it's actually costing you more, isn't it? And the tomato puree is 60p for 200 grams. And I reckon maybe one of those is worth two of those type of thing. So I was kind of thinking, what we'll do is we'll do the bacon pasta again, but we'll use tomato puree. So I'll mix up some tomato puree with some water, and we'll kind of see how much tomato puree we need to add to water to kind of get it that kind of consistency and taste. And then I was kind of thinking, so I've been watching lots of those like limited budget food challenges, and people tend to buy tins of tomatoes, and I kind of think, well, yeah, it's a good idea, but if you can buy a tin of tomato puree, it'll go a little bit further. And then I'm going to do an experiment about making a tomato soup with tomato puree instead. I'd normally use chopped tomatoes, but we'll do it with tomato puree, which is the way I was taught at college. So when I was at college, it was all the chefs that taught us had worked in kitchens in the 60s and 70s and 80s, when the food wasn't as particularly as good in the UK as it is now, and the way they cook things was very different to the way we cook things now. So now we would use better quality tomatoes. In the past, tomato soup was probably highly likely made of tomato puree that came out of a tube or came out of a big tin. But I was kind of thinking we'll use that to make a tomato soup, and then my advice would be, if you are on a really limited budget, you know, it's 20p more to buy that, but you can do more with it, and you get more tomatoes for your money type of thing. And we'll make a nice tomato soup, and we'll see if this bacon pasta is a nice bacon pasta. But I'm waffling too much, aren't I? So what I need to do is pause and kind of think about weighing out some tomato puree and letting it down with a bit of water. Right, so that's 50 grams worth of tomato puree in that glass. I'll have to do it off camera because my board is wobbly and it won't give a proper reading. So let's add 150 mils or 150 grams worth of water to that. Take it up to 200 grams, and then we'll give it a stir around and give it a taste. And then we're going to see how that turns out and what kind of ratio we need to do tomato puree to water. Will that look like some tomatoes that have been pureed down? Oh, I think we'll get away with it. I really want like a glassful. Might want a bit more. Yeah, so I reckon that is about that kind of glass's volume, I reckon, because I've done it in the past. So we need a bit more. So another 25 grams, I think, of tomato puree, and then I am here, I'm just doing things off camera. So 25 grams, and then take that up to 250. No, let's take it to 300. That'll be about right. Right, so there is 75 grams worth of tomato puree in there. How's that taste? I think we'll get with a bit more. 325. Right, so that's about the right volume of liquid in that glass that there will be in that tin. So it's 75. Yeah, it tastes fine as that. It's 75 grams worth of tomato puree and 250 millilitres of water. So that's fine. So that'd be 2 portions, wouldn't it? So that's already a lot cheaper. That's already a lot cheaper. To use 75 grams worth of that is comparable to that. So it's almost like we're getting 3 tins worth of tomato in that one tomato puree tube. So it's like 20p for 10p. That cost, yeah, so we're knocking 10p off. Yeah, okay, so we'll get away with about like 10p. Whereas one portion of the tin of the chopped tomatoes would be 20p. One portion out of a tube of tomato puree would be 10p. So we've knocked off 10p. So it's, instead of it being 46 pence a portion, it's going to be 36 pence a portion, which is even better, isn't it? So, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it in a short as well. So we'll kind of do I've done 2 versions of this video before, so we'll do like a short version, which will go on the shorts on YouTube, and then we'll do like the long version where I kind of explain what I'm doing, because I find that interesting. So if I find that interesting, I think someone else must find that interesting. Even though the things that I find interesting, most people don't find interesting, if that makes sense. Like most people just tell me the recipe, tell me what to do, tell me how to get the results, and that's all they're interested in. But I'm interested in the workings out. So that's fine. Those are my workings out. We can now cut to the cheap bacon pasta bit, can't we? Yes. Cheap bacon pasta for 34 pence a portion. For 2 portions you will need 75 grams worth of tomato puree mixed into 275 grams worth of water. 350 millilitres of water. Fry 200 grams of cheap cooking bacon so it looks like this. Fry 200 grams of cheap supermarket spaghetti in the lard from the bacon until it looks like this. Add your tomato, the water, the bacon, season with salt and pepper, and hard fry until it looks like this. Twiddle it with a ladle and fork until it looks like this. Sprinkle on some fried breadcrumbs to make it look fancy. Grate on some cheese if your budget allows. Right, how's it taste? I think it'd be good. I think the lard from the bacon will have made a huge amount of difference. Do you know what? For 34 pence a portion, that's delicious, is that? For 34 pence a portion, that's delicious. Now, If you want to make a bigger portion, use the same amount of bacon, use the same amount of tomato, but up the amount of pasta. So for bigger, I'd say you get away with another 50 grams worth of pasta per portion. If you wanted a bigger portion, make a more substantial meal. Also, you could cut down on the amount of bacon and make it even cheaper. You kind of just need the bacon there for the flavour and for the lard, but it does need to be there. But you could use slightly less. So you could up the pasta, keep the tomato the same. You'd have to put a little bit more water in, but you could certainly bulk it out a little bit further, and it still would taste delicious because you've added flavour through the frying of the bacon, frying of the pasta, the lard that's come out of the bacon, that's flavoured it, and you've also caramelised the sauce in the pan as well, so you've added extra flavour, and that's how you can get away with using tomato puree to make a really cheap pasta dish. 34p, that's really cheap, is that, isn't it? But anyway, that's delicious. I'm going to enjoy that for my tea. A success.